the privilege of being invited by Southern California Edison to visit their large hydroelectric facility located in Big Creek. Now, Big Creek is located above Fresno between Yosemite and the Sequoia National Forest, so it's up in the Sierras. It's beautiful there. And a little bit about the history of Big Creek. Well, first of all, Big Creek is a facility that includes 6 man-made reservoirs, 27 dams, and 9 powerhouses. And it generates over 1 megawatt of energy. So it represents 90% of all the hydroelectric power that's used by Southern California Edison. A bit about its history. The Big Creek facility was really the dream of a man named John Eastwood. And John Eastwood was a civil engineer. And he was sent up into the Sierras to try to find a way to get the transcontinental railway over the Sierras. And so he was out there with surveying crews looking at all these different places. And while he was there, he noticed that, hey, this would be a great opportunity for hydroelectric power. Because they had a large river running through the San Joaquin River and a lot of large tributaries and a lot of height, which is what you need to create hydropower. And so he mapped out this whole area and came up with a lot of different schemes about the way this could be done. But the one thing that he didn't have was a way to pay for it. And so he tried to get his own financing together, and that didn't come through for him too well. And this was right around the turn of the century, so this was the late 1800s. And so a lot of financing really wasn't available to the average person.
At what time?
In the late 1800s, so it was the 1890s, late 1890s at this time. And so John Eastwood looked around and he thought, who could I go to get this money? Well, there was a guy named Harry Huntington. And Harry Huntington had a lot of money. He's the guy that they named Huntington Beach after. And Harry Huntington got his money because his uncle was a railroad developer. And he had a ton of money. And his uncle married this woman who was about Harry's age. Well, lo and behold, when Harry's uncle died, well, Harry and his aunt married and they reunified the Huntington fortunes because half of the money that this guy had went to Harry and half of it went to his ex-wife. And so they were 2 of the richest people in the world at that time. And Harry Huntington had these electric vehicles called the Red Car Line. And this was located in around the Pasadena area. Actually, the tracks are still there. They're using it for the electric train today. The problem is that he didn't have a good, secure source of electricity to run this electric car line, the Red Car Line. So John Eastwood went to Henry Huntington and said, hey, look, I have this proposal for you. I found a place where we can build this huge hydroelectric power facility and build transmission lines and run them down into Los Angeles and power all of your Red Car Line plus whatever else Los Angeles needs, which at that time wasn't all that much. And so Henry Huntington said, hey, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And so he bankrolled this whole thing. And so John Eastwood got together with a group of people and they started building these facilities. And they started in 1911. And not only that, they had to build support equipment too for this. So they built a railroad, the San Joaquin and Eastern Railroad, which ran down into Fresno and up to this facility, 156 miles. They built it in 150 days.
Wow.
So pretty amazing. So, and then they harvested all the trees for the railroad ties right there, and they did some amazing things. They built this whole complex in 2 years. They were completely finished in 1913.
Wow.
And when I went up there and visited that facility, all of those facilities are still working today using the same generators, using what they call a Pelton wheel. And a Pelton wheel looks kind of like a Ferris wheel. They run water through, water runs through a conduit called a penstock. And it runs from a lake, usually up above where the powerhouse is, and it runs downhill so it can get a lot of pressure, and it runs into something that looks like a big water wheel. And these Pelton wheels are still working today in all of these plants, and it is a marvel. And it's really amazing when I look at the pictures of the people that built this place. Of course, there was a lot of cheap labor available then, probably not a whole lot of unions. But
Good engineers.
Yeah, definitely good engineers. But it turns out that that John Eastwood, Henry Huntington is the better businessman of the group, and John Eastwood was more of the engineer. So he was basically cheated out of all of his fortune by Henry Huntington, and he died penniless. And so when you hear about Henry Huntington and all the great things that he did, you can bear that in mind too. But when I went up there, they had one of the biggest rainfalls, of course, this year in California history, and a huge snowpack, and there was an immense amount of water there. So I got to see all the dams and all the water and all the power that's created, and it was really a great treat for somebody like me who's a energy engineer. So. And I'm really thankful for that. But I'm also thankful for people that have vision like John Eastwood. Adam Postmaster.